Tuesday's come around again, and NBL Now is here wrapping up all things round 5, looking ahead to round 6 as this NBL season gathers pace at a rapid momentum. Joel Peterson with you. We thought we'd check in on the state of Breaker Nation with Breakers legend, 4-time champion, grand final MVP, Tom Abercrombie. Tom, great to have you on the show.
G'day, Joel. Thanks for having me, mate.
Yeah, really, really good to have you here. Before we dive into the Breakers and everything happening in the NBL, I just want to take the temperature of New Zealand sport at the moment. What a crazy weekend. So the America's Cup, they win that again. The Women's World Cup, so Susie Bates and Sophie Devine really cement their legacy as two of the greats of international women's cricket. Liam Lawson scores points in the American F1 race. The men's cricketers bowl India out for 46 and win a test match. The netballers beat Australia. Orphaned FC win their first A-League game. They win cycling, they win triathlon. They won something in canoe polo, which I've never heard of. How is the mood over in your part of the world?
Oh, just another weekend in New Zealand sport, mate. It's what we do. Week in, week out, we get wins, and no, it was pretty special. I think the women winning the World Cup, absolutely incredible achievement, but incredible achievements all round. It was very proud weekend for us Kiwis. So we're riding on a high right now, which is really cool.
Yeah, it was cool to see. I think New Zealand teams are most Aussies' second favourite team in most cases, so it was great to see them doing well. And the Breakers, of course, are 3-1 out of the blocks in the NBL season. They sit second on the table at the moment. You were there to see them take on Perth on Saturday. How have you assessed their start to the season?
Yeah, look, I think they've been really impressive. A lot of people, myself included, didn't really know what to expect coming into the season, just how these new look Breakers would perform, new coaching staff, whole new bunch of players. But the one constant's been Parker Jackson-Cartwright. He's led from the front, and he's so good that he's been able to bring this team together. They play around him, and they've played some really good basketball. I think, I don't know if they've really been tested yet. They played Brisbane, Southeast, Perth without Bryce. I think there's some tough tests coming up, but 3 wins to start the season is a really good way to start. I think the way that they're playing has surprised a lot of people, and they've had some really good performances across the board.
Talk to us about PJC. You know him well. You played with him, of course, last season. He's come back in sort of the same type of form as an MVP contender. What's he like around the group? What's the Parker Jackson-Cartwright that we don't necessarily see on the outside?
Well, Parker's an interesting character. I think you see just in his style, in his dress sense a little bit, you get a sense of the kind of guy he's a quirky character, and he's a really fun guy to have around the group. He's a little bit different. He brings a really good vibe, and he's taken on that leadership role with the Breakers this year, and I think he's done a fantastic job so far. And I think one of the most important things to realise about Parker is with all that turmoil that went on in the off-season, Mody Mel leaving, Parker was already re-signed. He put his hand up and said, hey, I'm not going anywhere. I'm putting this team on my back, and I'm going to be a leader for the Breakers coming into next season. And he's done exactly that. And there's no confusion. It's Parker's team. Everything is run around him, and he's thriving in that.
What type of captain do you think he is? Every leader's different. What type of captain do you think PJC is?
Well, look, Parker's pretty reserved and quiet for the most part, but he's not afraid to step up and talk and say what needs to be said. But, in terms of a leadership point of view, I think where the Breakers have been challenged so far this season is obviously expectations coming into it and people not rating them all that highly, and them having that little bit of a chip on their shoulder, and then obviously the adversity coming back from all that travel. For him to bring that group together and get them on the right page going forward has been really important. But as I said, I think there's a lot of tough tests to come for this Breakers team. The travel doesn't get any easier. They're off to Christchurch for a home game this week, and they've got plenty of travel coming up. So when you talk about adversity and leaders needing to step up, and Parker Jackson-Cartwright taking on that mantle, there's going to be a lot more opportunities for him to do so as the season progresses.
Yeah, we know he can talk when he needs to. Good morning to Derek Rucker. Coach Cop, he's come in, Petteri Koponen, and done some really good things. How have you, with the challenges that they've had, the travel, obviously the US trip, a little bit of injury, getting a new team settled, how have you assessed his job in the early part of the season?
Well, the first thing I think about Coach Cop, whenever I talk to any of the players, they absolutely love him. They love playing for him. They love his style, the way he's been coaching, running practice and things like that. And, it has been different for some of the guys who were there last year. He runs a different ship to Mody Mel, but I think what you see out there is just a little bit more freedom. I think they still have their structure and discipline in a sense from last year. But I think Coach Cott brings a little bit more freedom to the guys and encourages them to go out and just and play their game. And he's also giving opportunities to everyone across the board. He's using his bench 1 through 10, 1 through 11 sometimes. And I think the guys appreciate that kind of confidence that he has in them. And as I said, talking to them all, they love playing for him. I think he's done a great job to start off.
And one of the players who's benefited of that was Max Darling. He was a terrific story on Saturday. So 15 career points coming to that game. He scores 15 points. He was really seen last year playing as a DP. He spent some time with the Illawarra Hawks before that as well. Tell us a little bit about Max and what he brings to the table.
Max is a great guy, and he's had an incredible journey. Like he went pro when he was 18 years old, went and played in Croatia and Romania before he came back and joined the Illawarra Hawks, and now he's back home playing for the Breakers. And obviously a DP last year, but he had his moments as a DP on the practice floor. You could see the kind of tools and physical attributes that he showed in the game against Perth. I think when he's healthy and fit, he's such a big, strong body and really versatile, and that's what they like with him in that 3 spot, and that's why he started every game so far this year, because I think for the first and foremost, it's that versatility at the defensive end, because he has a big body, he can guard multiple positions, and he moves his feet really well for a big, strong guy. And obviously the 3-point stroke came along against Perth and he knocked a few down. So in terms of his role on the team, he played it to perfection against Perth, and I think they're really happy with how he's going. Obviously, why wouldn't they be? He's had a fantastic start. And I think, as a personal level, I'm so happy for Max, because I got to see the hard work he's put in over the last year, and to get rewarded now, I think is just fantastic for him.
Yeah, it's great to see it paying off. So they're 3-1. They play on Thursday, as you say, at Wolfbrook Arena down in Christchurch. And they get South East Melbourne coming in, who, of course, with Sam McKinnon as an interim coach on Sunday, knocked off Melbourne United in the throwdown. Since then, we've learnt that Josh King has been mooted as their new coach. He's been coaching in Turkey. He spent some time with the San Antonio Spurs organisation, coached in Germany as well. With everything going on around South East Melbourne at the moment, as a leader, how would you narrow the focus of the group to sort of, the task at hand, which was Melbourne United and then coming across to New Zealand on Thursday?
Yeah, well, I think that's the key thing. You talk about narrowing the focus, and as a leader, there is no better time to lead than in times of toughness and adversity, because everyone's listening to you. You come into a team meeting the day or 2 days after a loss, and those ears are pricked up slightly more. You come in after losing your first 5 games in the trot, there's certainly no hesitation in that room. Everyone is listening, and they're looking to their leaders to lead. And when you have a change of coach on top of that, people are on edge, and they want to be able to do the right thing. And I think the way that they came out and played against Melbourne just shows the kind of integrity that team has. The next challenge is obviously going to be a new coach coming in, and him throwing in a whole bunch of new systems and how they balance bringing in new stuff and keeping some of the old. But I think in terms of leadership and leading and listening, there is no better time to get the attention of your team than when you're in trouble.
There've been a little bit of a story off the court, of course. Their owner, Romy Chowdhury, has entered the debate. He threw some shade Chris Goulding's way after that throwdown. Dean Vickerman has since come out and said that they will be remembering that comment before the next throwdown. And he said, I'd be disappointed if one of our owners made personal comments about another team's player on social media. I mean, it's always a tough space to get into when you've got people off the court throwing things in terms of the verbal barbs at those who are operating on the court. What did you make of that whole exchange, Tom, and the way that it's played out since?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. And I think, first and foremost, that the choice of language there is not right. Labelling Chris Goulding one of the best players in NBL history weak is not the right way to go about things. I'm sure he's watching the game and he's frustrated and infuriated, just like a lot of fans can be watching that stuff. And there's no doubt about it, elements of how Chris plays, like he does exaggerate contact at times. I've been chasing around for 16 years. I've seen it first and forehand, but I think the important thing to note here is that the way that he plays, he's trying to gain any advantage he can, right? And I've been in situations where I've had a hot hand and have guys draped over me out on the court, but he's facing this kind of treatment night in, night out, where guys aren't leaving his hip, they're locked in. And as a competitor, as an offensive player, as a shooter, he's trying to gain any little bit of separation and advantage that he can. So, it's that game within the game, the manipulation of space and physicality. And I think that's why, Chris is so good at putting that little bit of doubt in defenders' mind. If they get too close, you could get called for a foul. And for him as a competitor, he needs that little advantage. He's always searching for that little advantage throughout the game. And it can be tough. As I said, it can be infuriating as a defender chasing around and getting penalized for just being what you feel like is the right kind of physicality, and it's being blown out of proportion. But I think the whole situation kind of brings that all to light. And I think Remy's choice of words and how he went about that was probably the wrong way to do it. And obviously Dean Vickerman stepping up and defending his play, you'd expect nothing less.
Yeah, Chris Goulding may be many things. Weak is certainly not one of them. And you've been part of Dean Vickerman coach teams. Is that exactly the response you expected from him?
Well, Dean's a massive culture guy, as we know, and the culture of Melbourne United is as strong as anyone. So in terms of defending his players, sticking up for his players, he's not going to hesitate to do that. So I wouldn't expect anything more from him. I know that he and Chris and the rest of the Melbourne United team will remember those comments very well next time South East and Melbourne meet up.
Might just be put on the bulletin board before they walk out of the tunnel, I'd imagine. One story that's going to develop across the course of the week, and it developed out of that game on Saturday, was the Bryce Cotton injury. So he was cleared to fly home to Perth, where he'll undergo further assessment over in WA. First of all, you were there in person and reporting on that courtside. How did it look? And then how do Perth adjust if they don't have him?
Yeah, look, being there courtside, it didn't look like much. It didn't look like there was a whole lot of contact, but one thing I do know from being injured a couple of times playing is sometimes it's those nonchalant things that don't look like much that can actually turn into some nasty injuries. So, I hope, just like everyone else does, that Bryce is all right and it's nothing too major. Obviously, as it developed, I know because they had to fly the next day, the preventative measures to take him to hospital to get it checked out and make sure he was okay to fly was a part of that decision. And in terms of how Perth kind of reacts going forward, I think you saw it took them a little while to settle down after it happened. And then it took really Ty Webster to put that team on his shoulders and just say, look, like, we're not going to just fluff around out here. We need some direction in how we're going. And he put his head down, just got to the basket. And it was that kind of aggressive play that they needed to really rally around. And I think he's going to be a real focal point. Some of those young guards on the wings are going to get more opportunities. But there's no doubt about it, Bryce Cotton and the Perth Wildcats, that is them, and they are intertwined, and him not being there certainly changes the way they play. And I don't know what they're going to look like without him, but certain guys are going to have to step up. Ty Webster's one of them, and Keanu Pinder, I think, is going to have to play some better basketball too.
Yeah, so stay tuned to nbl.com.au and the NBL app for all the latest on that throughout the course of the week. They've got the Sydney Kings on Friday and a massive end of a double-header on Friday night at RAC Arena. Speaking of the Sydney Kings, they've sort of launched themselves into title contention. The Illawarra Hawks are right there at the top of things. Of course, you've got the Breakers second on the table, 3-1. As you look across the competition, Tom, who sort of stands out to you in the early part of the season?
Yeah, we're starting to get a little bit of clarity now, aren't we? 5 rounds in, and the cream's starting to rise to the top. As you said, the Illawarra Hawks and the Sydney Kings, for me, are clearly the two top teams at the moment. They've been the most consistent. They have fantastic roster balance, especially when you look at the Illawarra Hawks. I think they just have every position covered and just really good balance with and a good understanding about who they are. And Sydney Kings, you can say the same, and perhaps probably more talented across the board than anyone in the league. But they have a coach in Brian Goorjian of anyone who's able to get that kind of talent to buy in and get guys who potentially could play bigger roles for other teams to be able to sacrifice a little bit and play a role on a championship contending team. Brian is the perfect coach to try and get those players into line because he gathers so much respect. So I've loved what I've seen from Sydney so far. Illawarra's obviously been fantastic. I think the rest of the league's still trying to figure themselves out.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating little puzzle that plays out over the next little while. And a question without notice for you personally, obviously first year of retirement. You're off to the golf course later today to get a swing in some beautiful weather. How are you enjoying retirement and moving into the media and other facets of your career?
Look, I'm loving it. I think I wasn't quite sure how I'd feel going to Spark Arena for that first game and what the kind of emotions would be, but enjoyed being courtside, enjoyed just being a fan, watching the game, talking about it with you guys in the media has been great. and it's nice to just be on the other side of it. I do miss elements of it, but for the most part, I'm very happily spending a bit more time on the golf course and with my family.
How is the golf game going?
Does it ever get better? I feel like I'm getting worse the more I play it.
Yep, I think that's an experience that many of us share. I reckon you've got a hell of a head start on most of us mere mortals in that. Hey, Tom, great to have your company. Really, really valuable to get your insights. We're loving having you part of our NBL commentary team this season. Hit on well this afternoon, and thanks for your time on NBL Now.
Cool. Thanks, mate.
Great to have Breakers legend Tom Abercrombie with us on NBL Now, the NBL app, nbl.com.au. All the place to go for what you need throughout the week, and we'll be back throughout the week on NBL Now.